Okay, let me see how this is going to work. I didn't plan on doing an update, but I guess I'll talk. It's let's see, 3:30. I'll talk. Why am I doing an update? Because I got to test this new phone. I bought a few weeks ago. I'm sure I mentioned it. Now look at these Cricket phones. I bought a brand new Cricket phone for the purpose of making videos. And when I bought that phone, it had two settings: the high definition setting, and the other setting it had was what was called VGA. Most of the older phones, some of them even used to say like YouTube quality setting. The old Huawei phones used to say that, and some will just say normal. So you have high definition, normal. But now even the lower settings on phone cameras when you're recording, even the lower one is almost high def. It's almost equal to that. And for video uploads and all these little sites you see me messing with, high def is just untenable. You cannot use it. So when I got that other phone I just showed you, it didn't have the lower quality, lower pixels for what I do. And then I tried to bring it back, and I think I brought it back on the 8th day. And you have 7 days to return it. Of course, I get stuck with a brand new phone that I can't use. So the one I'm speaking on is like a $50 Samsung phone, and it also has what's called QVGA, the lower pixels. I don't care what the video actually looks like as long as you can hear what I'm saying. It is called, I had to run back and forth to Cricket, which I just did, and so it's a little bit, I could see the lady, you know, when you interact and people say, oh, he might be a little unstable in his, I could see, because when I went through the whole talk with the Cricket in town, I explained I need this, I need it for the setting. I said this phone has a setting because I checked it. And then when I got home, I'm trying to test it like this. And I go to the settings and it's saying front camera. Setting is QVGA, which is what I need. But I'm trying to get it on the rear camera, thinking when it's facing me, I'm thinking that's the rear camera. And then I cannot find the setting for, quote, the rear camera. Well, I put everything in the box, went back to Cricket. I said, look, this phone has the setting I need for when I'm recording myself. And she's telling me, well, you had said you wanted it for the front camera. I said, no, I need it for when I teach on my videos and all. And then I realized this is the front camera, which is what I wanted. But I could tell they were a little like, you know, he seems like he's under pressure. And then I brought that other phone back to show them. I said, look, I went and bought a brand new one a few weeks ago, which I did. I said, and I have no use for it if somebody wants to buy it. So when I was leaving, there was just the workers at Cricket. But they could already tell, oh, he might be a little. I said, does anybody want to buy it? And they're like, no. I said, 1 penny. I'll sell you this brand new $80 phone for 1 penny. And they still turned me down. I think they just were like, we would prefer for you to leave the store. I wasn't mad, but they could see. So I'm testing this, and the battery was almost dead when I got it. You'd think it would have a little more on it. I don't want to do a lot of the news. This is a little update. I taught Ephesians chapter 4 this morning, which will go up in a few days. And when I looked at some of the things that they did, even with Mr. Trump's health, the doctor checked him out. And as I saw, there was a couple of shows that put like the montage together. Each reporter. It was almost like I was surprised they didn't ask, but he's going to die someday, yes or no? Asking that the doctor who also examined previous presidents. It's like almost like they wanted to say, but someday he's going to die. They asked questions like, how could you say that he's in such as good health as you claim, doctor. This is a press conference by the doctor who examined Trump. How could you say? But he eats junk food and oh, the doctor, I've never seen that before. And talking to the press, national TV, he was on the defensive. He said, maybe it's because he has good genes. They didn't believe it. And then the doctor on CNN, Sanjay Gupta, who was going to be the Surgeon General at one point, and he then said, no, it's probably stuff that they were going to, scrutinize him at that time under Mr. Obama. But Sanjay Gupta diagnosed him on CNN as having heart disease. Found that interesting. I've never heard of a doctor who did not examine the patient give a diagnosis on air like that. And it was just, you could see how mad they were that he wasn't going to die of some particular thing. Trump requested the cognitive test, which normally, you don't do on a president, but he wanted to push back on. He's got Alzheimer's and all these types of things. So he passed like 30 out of 30. Then they questioned, but it's just such a joke. I heard a man, a Democrat from New York. I watched him on one of the shows the last 2 days. And what he said, he worked with Donald Trump. Now, this is a long-standing Democrat, not a U.S. senator or anything, but he's in politics in New York, whatever position. And they have, I guess, a group, Democrats for Trump, which were people that knew Mr. Trump. And he was on the air, and he said, this guy's not a racist. He says, I've known him my whole life. And then he said how, I never heard Trump use what this man did in his defense, but he brought up one of the things I brought up before, that when he was going to open up that golf course in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, they did not want those private golf clubs were not open to blacks. That was the rule there. And he brought that up, which I did too. He said, and I think Trump sued that county, it might have been Palm Beach or whatever. He did sue. I shared that. And he said also at one time they needed disaster aid many years ago for Haiti. And the Democrats there in New York, they were trying to raise disaster aid. And he said, look, we went to a lot of our Democratic constituents and we needed money. They needed a plane. This is years back. Trump said he wrote the check. And so this man's experience of knowing him and then seeing what's been going on, I don't defend Trump on the way he does stuff and all, but to see how, when I watched what I just explained to you, I thought, what a joke. They were mad at the doctor for giving him a clean bill of health. And I even thought to myself, I said, well, I know Donald Trump never smoked. I smoked. And he never drank. And I did drink for many years. I have over 5 years sober. I said maybe that played a role in his health, but they were just mad that he was healthy. That's all. I think the DACA thing is, if I tried to explain that before, but the DACA thing is, that is not going to work. Even if you try to say, let's leave DACA in place. It was something that Mr. Obama did. And when he did it to give protection to that many, most legal scholars said, no, you can't do a policy on your own as a president, which is called like an executive order or a change of policy. Mr. Obama said that himself in the beginning, and then he did it anyway, and I'm not mad at him for doing it, but most legal people said, oh no, that won't stand. If it was challenged, even under Mr. Obama, meaning if Congress sued him at that time with the states, they could have, but they didn't. But when the new president comes in and was going to overturn that, just about anybody said, of course, that can be done. And he didn't initially overturn it. It was going to run out because, look, he was going to keep that old policy. He wanted Congress to do something, and then the whole thing blew apart. When I look at I saw something on the news the other day. This is somewhat of a news rollout and a test on this video, this new phone. They talked about, as I was actually in New York, New Jersey at the time, right up to the election and last year, and I kind of questioned. I said, man, I said when Trump made that statement, they wiretapped Trump Tower. I figured what he's talking about is probably what I was correct. They probably had FISA warrants to kind of look at Mr. Trump, accusations about Russian oil. And then I understood recently Ms. Feinstein, Dianne Feinstein out of California, she released some of the stuff and she shouldn't have released it. But what she released was saying about the Russia investigation, that there were real concerns, and that supposedly the FBI and all, they began getting warrants on Trump's people, the campaign. Look, during an election, that's very shaky for maybe the FBI and all to be kind of going after one of the opposition people and actually obtaining warrants on them. And at this stage, what we found out was they used part of this Trump-Russian dossier to obtain those warrants. During an election, you had one opposition party, the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, who funded not just opposition research, but they funded certain things that were unverified, meaning let's see what we can find on the opponent, which in campaigns people do. Now, that's not really illegal to go out, and a lot of times in this particular firm called Fusion GPS, who kind of did this investigation on Trump during the campaign, it was later found out that Hillary Clinton, the DNC, paid for it. And there was a New York Times reporter who the DNC and the Democrats assured the New York Times when they were asking questions a year or so ago that no, we didn't pay for it. And she came out and said, they lied to us. Why is this important? Because opposition research, meaning, look, we got stuff on Trump. This is the quote Russian dossier. When that makes it into the hands of FBI and all, and then when they get it, realizing this stuff was kind of opposition research and it's unverified, and then they use that to begin surveilling Manafort and others. They were not supposed to do that. And some of these men, Strokes and others that were, the other guy, what's his name? I forget, Shapiro or Andy, a few of them, then it came out that they had maybe meetings with the news reporters before they were on this case. Now, there has, look, anybody that honestly looks at that would tell you these are some problematic things. That a fake thing made it into the hands of Mr. McCain, where it was given to him. Then they said, well, we had to look at it. And then when you read some of the statements that were released, some were released again today, I haven't even looked at them, things that, how these people were having collusion. And then you say, well, now we're going to find things, maybe a Mr. Manafort, one of Trump's men, and we'll go back and we'll just look for any wrongdoing you've ever done throughout your life. And it seems as if they might be doing that with Mr. Trump, the Deutsche Bank and all. Now, the standard there would be, we just had something that allowed us to investigate you from the day you were born type of thing. And that's not what this should have been about. And the fact that the Clintons and Hillary paid for that type of stuff, and that stuff was used to get warrants on citizens, that is a problem, okay? That is a problem. You have to meet a high standard. But because of the way it's going right now in this country, and the way I just showed you, you saw those media people mad, telling the doctor who examined other presidents before, how could this be? We won't accept that Mr. Trump has good genes. How could you? I've never heard that type of thing before. So it's seeped in. I have good liberal friends, and they're watching this stuff all the time, like MSNBC and all. And without realizing it, they also have accepted that. How could it be now? How could it? It's fed into them, okay? So as this brief little update, tonight a man will be put to death here in Texas, okay? And they usually put them to death at death row in Huntsville, Texas. I believe it's the first execution for the year in the United States, okay? I'm checking this, a new thing I'm doing on the video. and he had brutally molested some people, kids, younger girls. I didn't read the whole story, and he was guilty. He'll be put to death tonight. He had a stay of execution. I remember this because he made a claim a few months back. He was supposed to be executed last year. That there was another inmate, Larry Swearingen or something, who was also on death row. And this man tonight, who's going to be put to death, said he asked me to take responsibility for the murder he's on death row for. So they halted it to investigate that. But then he started releasing the last few days. He said, I was also, sort of like what Ted Bundy did, saying I was also involved in other ones, meaning maybe he's using that as a delay tactic. But there was something in him. When I didn't ever watch the full Ted Bundy interview, but there was stuff in Bundy that he knew this is sinfulness of man. And of course he was responsible for what he did, the heinous crimes, and he was put to death. But that thing was, that was in him. The sinful nature and how far it'll go down the road. Jesus makes statements in the Gospels. And he said he would not commit himself to any. This is in John's Gospel. Because he knew what was in man. He knew what was in man. And those that want to advocate for good, right causes in society, if that's not founded upon something greater than your own personal morality, this gets into a lot of teaching I did of natural law and some of the John Locke and these guys. But if you think you have the capability, no matter how liberal you are or conservative you are, if you think you have the capability to really mete out a true and a noble thing apart from God, you're unable to do it. Those reporters that were grilling that doctor, just as an example, they were just mad. They were just mad that Mr. Trump had a clean bill of health, to the point where some have said their own diagnosis. I told you on CNN that we diagnosed him as heart disease or whatever else it was. And I know you say, well, we go after that man because things we see that we don't like, which I see things that I don't like. But a lot of people are cloaking that, and the media in this country they're done as far as any honest. Some of the things you heard me talk about, who would ever thought that some opposition party, of any party, would be able to get unverified accusations that they paid for? And it's also reported that the FBI even paid for some of that later on, which is astounding. Then you saw some of the statements of these men doing the investigations, things to the Mr. Strokes and others saying, if this guy ever gets elected, we'll have to basically do something to make sure he is removed. Those are some of those statements these guys made before they even got on these investigations and all. So don't tell me that there's these are just honest men that are, some of them, I think Weinstein, he decided, I'm going to retire next year. Look, if they find out the things that you guys had done, some of you within this, quote, deep state, FBI and all you guys, if they see this, and it's now come to light, never mind retiring, some of you guys are going to do prison time because of the way you manipulated some of that stuff. If you ever use that power, whether it's a Mueller or anybody, and then you say, now our job is to find any wrongdoing ever that we can find on you. Some of them even went after Donald Trump's son, his grandson. There were even statements made like we're going to have, never seen this, I think that grandson is 11. Okay, so I do want to encourage my friends. I'm doing a little bit, you might see some test videos I've been doing that show up sideways. It's a lot of, if you click them, they play, because I'm testing some of those different sites. But I found that some of them, like, they want you to, of course, purchase, and eventually you purchase. But like, if you're not going to purchase, then they do this. All right. I'm not sure any more top news. Okay, we'll just end it with that. We'll see how this works, and God bless everybody. This is a test video.